Welcome. Thanks for coming, and we're happy to have these gentlemen come and give us some insight into something that's very important, particularly in these days. But let's begin, as we should always do, with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Dear Heavenly Father, we ask you to send your blessing upon us. Lord, help us to be good stewards of our bodies. Help us to respect the gift of life, not just out in the world, but the gift of life we begin, our life. Lord, with particular intercession of St. Luke and St. Raphael, may we grow in knowledge of how to take care of ourselves better, how to take care of those we love better. We ask all this through Christ our Lord. Amen. St. Joseph, pray for us. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Father. All right. Good evening. Good to see you. So I am Dr. Caleb Luco. I am a chiropractor here in Traverse City. I'm not going to talk about chiropractic tonight, so you can be rest assured that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the immune system. We're talking about how to build it to be more effective. And my passion is health and wellness, and from a preventative standpoint. And I think that's a message certainly to be spoken of now during the times, but always. And so I'll get into that. And so hopefully there's a lot to be talked about. Feel free to ask questions. I'm going to ask for some audience participation, certainly at the end. But if you have questions, please feel free. I am a former teacher before I was a chiropractor, so this is our classroom tonight. So feel free to ask questions. And then also, Dr. Adam Duresi is going to speak in just a little while, so we're going to tag team this. This is my family. The reason why I get so excited about health and do what I do, blessed with an incredible wife that I don't deserve. I'll mention her a couple times because of how good she is for me, how God, puts two people together with different gifts and abilities to bring out the best, hopefully, in us, and then our kids. In our story, I certainly won't have time tonight to get into it, but certainly of God's work in many ways in our life. We were told we would never be able to have kids. That certainly was not the case. And then we had a situation with our daughter, which the Lord worked and healed her. So all of this is very close to my heart from a health and wellness standpoint. With that. So I want to first start talking about 4 kind of principles before I get into things to kind of set the table, if you will, as an introduction for where we're going tonight. So first and foremost is balance and moderation, something I talk to my patients daily about, something I think affects us in many ways, but obviously during this time we've heard so much. It's been a year plus of 2 different sides that we always hear, 2 different camps. I'm not here to say who's right and who's wrong. That's not the point. I'm here to bring balance and moderation to it. I think there's truth always to both sides, and there's ways that we can work with that, and so that's certainly my desire. I think this is a time certainly for humility and grace, just where people are at. I've seen that so much, in this year. I think all of us can think of friends and family that we have that are on one side and the other, and just what that's done to relationships, and that's not the goal. The goal is always unity. The goal is to extend grace, to be where people are at from that extent. So that's kind of the first principle or thing that I want to share is just moderation and balance, and it affects health in every way, which we will talk about. And on that same note, I find very much that our world is a world of extremists. I'll call it bingers, where we get super excited to do something and we do great at it for a short period of time, and then we fall off. And so I'm about lifestyle changes. I'm about real, genuine, like, we want health, we want wellness. It doesn't happen in a week, it doesn't happen in a month, it doesn't happen in a year. We need that to be a part of life for a long time. And so that's what I'm consistently teaching, from that standpoint. So I get people all the time that say, man, I exercise really good. I work out, I do my high intensity workouts. I work out 45 minutes, then I go sit at work for 8 hours, 10 hours. Well, it's great you're working out, you're doing really good, but we need to get movement. We need to do other stuff. Same thing from a diet standpoint. Well, I just had this amazing organic smoothie. I mean, it was just so packed. And then what'd they do the rest of the day? They ate garbage. So there's a limited, effect for that. So that's all part of this message that we're going to talk about. Prevention, as I already said, is what I get so excited about. I get excited about teaching how to prevent back pain. I get excited about preventing COVID now, or cancer, or arthritis, because so many of these things are preventable. Or certainly, if our body is prepped, we respond so much better to them. And so there's great things that we can do to prep our body and prime our body so that it will respond appropriately when a situation happens. And so that's certainly what I want to instruct and teach. With that, our immune system is constantly under attack. That's from everything around us, what we're interacting with. So it's not that, my immune system, since we're not interacting with people as much, it doesn't need to work as hard. Not necessarily true. I think it's actually more effective when we actually interact in ways, because there's positives to that. And I think we've learned, certainly during this time, it is effective to wash hands, certain things that do make a difference. But interaction is obviously good in more ways than one. And so our immune system, like I said, is constantly under attack, constantly being affected with things. And so I want that strong. I want that to respond accordingly. And so as I think I mentioned before too, prevention takes place years before a situation, months before. So oftentimes when I'm dealing with patients, they'll do something a day before, they'll do something a week before, maybe, and that's better than nothing. But true preventative wellness takes place well before anything ever happened, before it's a situation. So months and years prior to that. Not trying to scare you, but in 5 years from now, we're going to have a COVID-20 or COVID-21 or something. There's going to be more stuff that's out there. That's just the way viruses work. Things happen. So we can either wait to respond to it in 5 years, or we can have a strong immune system so that we're able to respond appropriately when it happens. And that's my goal, is teaching the health and wellness side of it, because it makes a difference. It makes a huge difference. Next two things that I want to talk about is as followers of Christ, as people of faith, everything that I do flows out of what Jesus has done for me and who I am, and my identity being connected to that. And so that's all the more reason I get so excited about health and wellness, because I certainly realize my body, this is not my own. This is a privilege for me to be able to take care of. to treat well, to make sure that I can get it to last as long as I can, because I want to help others. And I realize that when my body is doing well, I can then do more to help others. I can be a better witness in that way, but I can be so much more effective in helping those around me with needs, because I'm not worried about myself. I'm not worried about all the ailments and things that I have that are keeping me from that. So just a couple reminders of that. We are his workmanship created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. I love Galatians 2:20. I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. Those are the reminders, certainly of who we are, and affects in every way my decisions, hopefully every day, but certainly from a health standpoint too, in who I am and what that means. We are new creations, and so we're gonna live differently in that way. Also, certainly God is sovereign, and we are not. And with COVID in this situation, I have heard some wonderful stories of how God has used this situation to advance his work, and something I never would have thought could have happened. So I love hearing those stories, because there is good coming out of this, and there is definitely positives with that. And I certainly recognize from a even health standpoint, he's the master physician. He made our bodies. He knows every hair, every cell in us. And so I welcome that and want that. Hopefully tonight we're going to talk with some level of expertise, but I also certainly realize that there's a lot out there. I love learning. I love just seeing some of those things. The body's complex. I don't think there's no doctor, there's no one that can perfectly say how everything works and how everything responds. And so I think there's a level of humility also in there. Whatever that's worth, I always certainly trust his leading and his sovereignty when it comes to things. So let's get into it. If I asked you, how do you know that your immune system is strong? What would you say? I don't get sick very often. That's usually the first response, which may or may not be a good answer. So a couple things to think about. Allergies oftentimes can be a sign of some immune challenges. Minimal to large. They're not a normal thing. Even seasonal allergies, food allergies are not normal. So those can be a sign of some immune challenges, autoimmune conditions that are developed later. To your comment about getting sick, when I have someone that says, man, I haven't been sick for like 10 years. I'm super healthy and I have a good immune system. I say, I disagree with you. That is not a sign of a strong immune system. Oftentimes, that's a sign of an extremely weak immune system that's probably constantly sick that you just don't realize it. And so you're so sick that you can't get sick would be the way that I would explain that. So the sign of a good immune system would be we get sick, we get a sore throat, we get sniffles, but your body deals with it effectively. In a day to 2 days, you're over it, you clear it out, and you're good to go. And that happens often because, as I said, we are constantly, continually inundated, attacked from an immune standpoint. So an effective immune system is going to work, and it's going to clear stuff out, and it's going to get rid of it quickly. And if you have kids like I do, then your immune system is in, extra mode, because I have the privilege of just being exposed to tons of stuff, whether I like it or not, because they get into stuff and do things because they're kids. Digestive issues, which we're going to talk about, is another one. So an effective digestive system is huge. I know very little people that have no digestive complaints. I mean, it's almost everybody has acid reflux, has IBS, has whatever, some condition where, their digestive system is not working the way that it should. And that is a sign of immune challenges. So we'll get into all that. We've talked about a little bit, but what I'm hoping to describe in just a little bit, that health is so much more than physical. And so that's, when I deal with the immune system, when I deal with health, we tend to think that it's all physical. I'm doing really well because I'm not sick, or I don't have a condition, so that means I'm really healthy. And that's not necessarily the case. So what's God say about health? One of my favorite verses in the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, which is considered the first and greatest commandment, is you should love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. I love that Jesus said it this way. Could have said it so many ways. You're supposed to love me. Could have said it simply, but he used kind of all aspects of our what it means to be human, and that's what it means to be healthy. When our heart, our mind, our soul, our strength, when all of those aspects are doing well, and all of those aspects are healthy, and so all of those have immune system benefits, which we will talk about. So just a way of bringing in the compass and focus of heart, soul, mind, and strength. Some others as well. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers and sisters, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God. This is your spiritual worship. It's, once again, recognizing our bodies are not our own, and it's my privilege, not something I have to do, to offer that to God and to make sure that I'm using it appropriately, because it is a temple where the Holy Spirit lives, and I'm going to make sure that I live accordingly and do what I need to. Diets, food. So we're going to get into food. Probably all of you at some point in your life have tried one diet or another, or 10 diets, because that's what we do. We say, oh, that worked for you, I'm going to try this. And there's benefits to some of them. And it's something that I consistently get asked about, is different diets and what that means. 5 years ago or 10 years ago, it was paleo. Everything was paleo. Now it's keto. Everything's keto. And so there are benefits. In 10 years, it's going to be something else. I mean, there's all of these. And so when I get to talk to people about it, first of all, I ask them what their motivation is. Most of the time, it's weight loss. And I think that's good. We need to be in that and to work on that. But once again, I want health. And so there's ways to effectively get weight loss and help our bodies. And so some of the diets, I don't want someone on long term. We're going to talk about fasting, another one that's really popular. And so there's some benefits to that and some potential shortfalls with it. I want people to not be focused on the outside, which, as I said before, we tend to be so focused on physical health and the outside and not worry about what's going on the inside. And we know God cares about the inside far more than the outside. But I also know that when my inside's working in all aspects, it's probably going to show up on my outside. from a health standpoint, from a wellness standpoint. So we're trying to work inside out, at least in that way. So food is a huge one. Food is definitely a big one that I think within the faith community, within the church, that we can probably make some great steps towards greater health and wellness. I love 1 Corinthians 10:31, so whatever you eat or drink, whatever you do, do everything for the glory of God. It's even the food that we're eating, that's breakfast, lunch, dinner, that's the simple things that we're doing in a way that is good. So I want to talk about some principles and not rules. I don't like rules. I like principles to follow. To get into that, with food, there's macronutrients and micronutrients. People are usually focused way too much on the macronutrients. That's your proteins, carbohydrates, and fats, and that's what they're tracking, and this diet is structured in such a way, and they're counting calories and all that. I'm not saying that's terrible. I'm saying that there's a better way, Americans, for the most part, are not malnourished in any way. We're actually probably overnourished from a macronutrient standpoint, but we're way undernourished from a micronutrient standpoint. When we get into vitamins and minerals, that's where we have deficiencies. That's where we're malnourished. And so that's where I want people to focus their time and energy to eat foods that are nutrient dense, that are full of nutrition, full of the vitamins and minerals that their body needs, not just focusing and reading the label on how many grams of fat does this have, how many grams of protein does this have, because I've never known anyone that has gained weight from eating 5 pounds of spinach. I've never known anyone that has gained weight from, constantly eating beets and kale. It's impossible. There's no way you can eat so many calories of really good food. Your body's going to use it and get rid of it. You're not going to, and so we unfortunately get excess weight because we're eating stuff that is not really food, and then we're not moving in the way that we need to. And so those are the things that we have to change when it comes to that. So here's the principles. I want people to eat the rainbow. When I say that, colorful foods. So not Skittles, which are colorful, but which there's a time and place. But foods that are colorful usually mean they have antioxidants. They have vitamins and minerals. They're full of good things. So real food that unfortunately shouldn't have to be explained, but does need to be explained. So if it grows on a tree or in the ground, it's real food. If you buy it at a store and it's packaged in plastic or cardboard, it might have some real food in it, but it's probably not entirely real. Kind of the rule of thumb is with packaged food, if you cannot read all the ingredients on it, if you can't pronounce them, then it's probably full of stuff that you shouldn't eat. If you can look at the ingredient label and you can say, I can say all those words and I know what they all are, okay, it probably has mostly real food in it, and it's probably decent. There's obviously a lot in there, but those are kind of general principles that I try to teach and follow. Vegetables and fruits are what we want to consume most of because those have our micronutrients. So I try to teach you eat twice as many vegetables first as proteins. I can get into that a lot more, but I believe the vast majority of us are eating way too much animal protein. I'm not against eating animal protein. I'm not against vegetarians, and I think there's a balance, and I think everybody's different. So that's where it can be a lengthy conversation. I don't think there's one way to eat for everybody. I think there's ways, and that's why I bring up eating for your eating for your type and the metabolic typing diet. There's ways to figure out your metabolic tendencies, which then I could suggest better ways to eat. There's certain people that do much better eating very, very little to minimal animal protein. There's other people I want to suggest more animal protein because they need it, and there is definitely health benefits from it. But generally speaking, we as Americans just eat far too much animal protein. My rule of thumb is really 2 to 3 servings a day of animal protein. That's meat, that's dairy, that's everything, would be adequate for most people. Some it's 1 serving a day would be adequate. The typical American probably gets 5 to 6 servings of animal protein a day. So just too much. I want to, in this area, I think this is an area for us to practice self-control. Not something that we talk much about in life and in the church. And it's a fruit of the Spirit. I think it's kind of important. The church I grew up in, I can remember my pastor saying to us that we should say no to ourselves at least twice a day. That might be from a second brownie. That might be from saying something that we shouldn't, but we should be practicing that daily. And I think oftentimes with food, we do not practice self-control. We practice, my control. It's what I want, so I'm going to eat it. Never before in the history of the world have we had food so readily available. I can get whatever I want in 10 minutes. I can call on the phone, I can order it, I can microwave it, That's never happened. For thousands of years, you ate what you grew in your backyard. You ate what you had right in front of you. And so I think there's some bad things with it being so accessible. So I think practicing self-control is just in life is important, but certainly when it comes to health. So back to moderation, I kind of teach the 80-20 rule. That 80% of the time, I want to be extremely focused in what I'm eating, following the principles of what I said. But I also know that I want to have fun too. I enjoy pizza. I enjoy cake or whatever. And it shouldn't be something that, I know I'm going to suffer for the next 3 days because I just ate this, or I know that, it throws everything off. There's totally times where that's okay. And you should enjoy, those things in life, and it's totally fine. So it's way easier when you know that you're doing well the majority of the time. I think the vast majority of people do it the other way around. Like I said before, we're bingers, and so 80% of the time they're eating garbage, and they eat a little bit of good because it makes them feel good, because I just had this really good smoothie, or I had a great salad for lunch the other day. Okay, that's good, but that's once a week that you're doing, something that you need to. So it needs to be, certainly part of our lives within that. There is a huge connection with our digestive system and our brain, and there's a lot of really good research that's coming out. This is kind of one of the frontiers within health, is how that's connected. Fascinating stuff. A lot more to learn there. And that's where the majority of our immune system actually takes place, is in our digestive tract. First and foremost, so much bacteria, viruses enter in through our mouth, and if we can't effectively kill them initially, that's where things start to fester and start to grow. And so if we have digestive weaknesses, it just opens us up to so many things that we shouldn't have. And that's where, so much happens. So this is, just to get you thinking about it, because it's, like I said, digestive conditions, unfortunately, are all over the place. So many people have them, but there is a major connection with the immune system in a properly functioning digestive system, but also with the brain. And how protective it is for many different conditions, some of the degenerative neurological conditions that are much better prevented with a healthy digestive tract. And so there's some more coming on that. But just as a way of getting into those, I liked this diagram because it kind of explains the brain and gut connection in someone that where it's not working well, and the connection with even some mental illness when it comes to depression, anxiety, and how that affects digestion. And then on the other side of things, when things are working appropriately, how exercise helps with digestion, the gut in its ability to absorb, to carry in the way that it needs to. So there's just an amazing connection with that. Fasting. Also something else that is hugely important to our health. Certainly Jesus talked about it, and I highly recommend it for many reasons. In Matthew 6 is one of the main places where fasting is mentioned. I love that it says, "And when you fast," twice. So I think it's kind of said that like it's an expectation, or it's something that we should be doing. Hugely important to us spiritually. I hope. I know personally in my life, almost every major decision that I've made has been by prayer and fasting, consistently. And I certainly hope that that's the way things are. But I think there's so many health benefits too from fasting, because God knew what He was doing when He suggested it, and once again, having self-control in that way. So I'm not going to get into too much, but there's amazing things that happen to our body when we don't eat. Obviously, we want to eat really good, but I think it allows a time of rest and recharge. And so there's a lot with fasting. There's so many ways that you can do it. Intermittent fasting, as I kind of mentioned, has become more popular. There's benefits to that. Potentially a lot of new research even showing the protectiveness and prevention from intermittent fasting with like Alzheimer's, dementia, how it just helps those considerably. And then also within 48 to 72-hour fasts, cells can regenerate, which help kind of reset our immune system when it comes to a fasting standpoint. So, I mean, many aspects, from blood control to inflammation to blood pressure and cholesterol, are affected by fasting. So, something I would strongly consider. I think, like I said, a really important part of within the faith community. I know the church we go to, it's monthly, something that we practice. I think that makes a lot of sense. So, once a month, build that in, make that a part of your rhythms. Certainly from a spiritual standpoint, but from a health standpoint, as there's so many benefits from that. I'm going to transition to Dr. Duress, who's going to talk about movement and exercise.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Adam Duress. As Dr. Haluka mentioned, I'm going to kind of take us into moving well and moving the body. This is my family. I'm the middle child, so I have two brothers, and those are my folks. They're back in Ohio, and I was really blessed to be brought up in a family that God was a priority. So that's our church in the background, actually. So just really blessed. And I want to talk about moving our body, how that pertains to immunity. I think our body is just brilliantly designed to be able to locomote and walk, and I want to share that with you. Some scriptural text about walking with God. Micah 6:8. He has told you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God. Another one that I really found powerful is Deuteronomy 5:33. You shall walk in all the way that the Lord your God has commanded you, that you may live, and that it may go well with you, and that you may live long in the land that you shall possess. And then I think we had Colossians earlier, but Colossians is so rich. Therefore, as you receive Christ Jesus the Lord, so walk in him. Moving into discussion of movement, almost more important is the discussion on non-movement. So kind of how Dr. Hluko was talking earlier, we'll have people say, I worked out for 30 minutes, I ran 4 miles, and the rest of the day I was sitting. So that's terrific, but the sitting is such a big deal. A big adage that's going around is sitting is the new smoking, and I don't know that that's necessarily completely accurate, but I think there's some merit in that. Certainly there's differences between sitting and smoking, but a study that we looked into here that was done by the American Journal of Epidemiology after a further study from the American Cancer Society found that sitting essentially led to increased death. So in this case, they were looking at females that sat for over 6 hours a day and led a sedentary lifestyle, and they found that they're 90% more likely to die, which is a pretty staggering number. In comparison with males, they looked at those that were compared to active coworkers and found that they were 40% more likely to die. So it's not necessarily the active minutes more as the non-active minutes that can be extremely vital in our health. This is just a quick graphic on different ways that sitting can harm you. Excellent. I'll just point out a few things here that I thought were interesting. Going back to the stomach and the discussion on the digestive system, sitting can be detrimental to the gut and the GI system. It can kind of deter enzymes from working properly, and it can kind of shut down fat burning. So standing is definitely, and moving is definitely beneficial in that regard. I'll talk about the legs a little bit as we go forward with the lymphatic system, but fluid can pool if you're sitting more so, can lead to increase in the fluid in the lower body especially. So moving around helps circulate fluid in the body, which is directly related to the immune system. And then I'll point out the back as a chiropractor that over-sitting, sitting over long periods of time can definitely lead to patterns of tightness in the back and increased compression in the discs in the back, and ultimately lead to some serious chronic low back pain. So just standing is really important. I myself just transitioned to a standing desk in our office, and I've been tracking caloric expenditure, and it's gone up quite a bit. But some people are at home and they're having to switch their office setup. So we've been talking quite a bit with people that have transitioned to remote working and are having a tough time setting up an ergonomic workspace. So hopefully you're not working from your toilet and you have some sort of setup, but it's something to be said about trying to get a comfortable setup and standing. This guy went to extreme lengths to get a standing desk through the floor, but I was doing some research and looking at standing versus sitting. I think a lot of people don't realize how much more energy it takes to stand versus sit. So I looked at several different resources and found about on average that you burn roughly 50 to 70 more calories per hour when you're standing, which can really add up throughout the day. Just standing here right now, I'm having to sway and stabilize myself. So I'm using muscles in the core that are stabilizing, and that costs more energy in the body. So in that sense, it takes several more calories for me to stand than it does sit. So that's kind of the breakdown there. And it's different for every person depending on your size of your body and everything. But I think there's merit in standing versus sitting. Another thing too that I think is important is and that's hard to see, but that's a watch face, and if you have an Apple Watch, you'll know that it'll yell at you every hour if you haven't been up and stood up. So that's something that I think more people can take advantage of and get up and walk around every minute. It's going back to that discussion of just changing the mindset of, I may have exercised earlier, but these hours where I'm sitting are going to be more detrimental. So I think that's something that can be really important as we go forward. So these are just some exercise guidelines that Dr. Haluko and I are recommending. There's different mediums where you can get recommendations, but this is kind of what we came up with. We recommend to patients that they do some sort of cardio activity for at least 20 minutes 3 times a week. So whether it's walking briskly, hiking, playing golf, any sort of thing, just to get the heart rate up. You don't have to go out and run a 5K every day. In terms of muscle strengthening, with weights or resistance, 25 minutes 3 times a week. You can couple that with your cardio and knock it out. You don't have to go to the gym and pump iron or spend a bunch of money on weights. There's a myriad of resources out there that offer really good home exercise programs with no equipment, just using the body weight or some sort of band or anything. And then something that I find is overlooked quite a bit is stretching. We typically ask patients to go before and after the workout 5 times a week for 10 minutes. Muscle elasticity, we see every day that a lot of people have really short muscles that are just don't have the range of motion that they should. So stretching can really benefit your health long term. And like I was saying earlier, the non-exercise activity is way more important than our exercise habits in terms of our overall health in relation to avoiding disease. So I'm asking people to be more mindful of the moments where they're not exercising versus actually exercising. This is the American Heart Association's recommendation for physical activity. It differs slightly from ours, but it's pretty similar. They're saying at least 30 minutes of moderate intensity, 5 days, total of 150 minutes per week. And then they separated vigorous aerobic activity for 3 days and 75 minutes per week. And then it continues here. Or a combination of the two and moderate, high intensity. So something a little higher intensity where the heart rate's quite a bit higher for 2 days. And then specifically for lowering blood pressure and cholesterol, about an average of 40 minutes for 3 to 4 days per week of a more moderate to vigorous intensity. So cycling would be a good example of that. In terms of exercise and immunity, there is certainly a link between the two. I went through quite a few research studies, and they're really in-depth and measure quite a bit of blood stuff that I didn't want to get into, so I tried to simplify it as best I could. So the big patterns that I found in linking exercise to the immune system were in white blood cell production. So the white blood cells are the primary responder to different sorts of infection. Exercise has been repeatedly shown to increase these white blood cells in the blood, so you're better suited there. Exercise consistently slows the release of stress hormones. The most well-known one is probably cortisol. Dr. Haluko will talk a little bit more about that later in terms of our response to stress and how that affects our immune system. And then I mentioned this earlier, but the lymphatic system is a key organ system in terms of our immune response. And like I was saying earlier, exercise allows the fluid to circulate through the body rather than pool. So you can feel lymph nodes all over your body, especially in the neck and in the groin area. And what they do is they fight infection and they recycle the fluid. So moving around definitely helps recycle and detox that lymphatic system so it can better protect you. I did want to mention one research study that I thought was interesting. There was 21 participants that were all initially sedentary that had volunteered to do this. They then were introduced to a 50-minute exercise program, and it wasn't very intense. It was just mostly a walking routine, and they did that 3 times a week for 4 months. So it was a 16-week study, and they measured plasma cortisol, and apolipoprotein A before and after. And after the 16 weeks, they found a decrease in cortisol, which is that stress hormone that I mentioned earlier. And then they found an increase in the apolipoprotein A. And what apolipoprotein A is it is a component of HDL, which is high-density lipoprotein, which other people know as good cholesterol. So if you get a cholesterol panel, you want your HDL to be as high as it can because it will help lower your cholesterol and ultimately decrease sorts of heart conditions. So this is a good thing that your apolipoprotein A was increased with exercise. I was thinking about it as I was prepping this, and it's hard. You would be hard-pressed to find a more beautiful area than northern Michigan. I was admiring it on my way to the church. The beautiful drive here, I think God had quite a hand in this area, and every time I'm outside, I'm in awe of the beauty up here. So I think we have it easy to get outside here, and I think we take it for granted how beautiful it is up here and how easy it is to get out and exercise. If you're like me and you're a glutton for punishment, you like to cross-country ski, so I just wanted to add that in. I think all seasons up here have something to offer in terms of activity. This is just a graphic showing different benefits of exercising outdoors. I just wanted to point out a few on the left side in the middle, increasing vitamin D, which is an important player in the immune response. To the right, second from the right in the middle is just generally boost your immune system, improve sleep. And I would argue one thing that's missing on here is that you get a greater connection with God when you're exercising outdoor, just because you're in the natural presence of the beauty that He created. So certainly many benefits from getting outside. I just wanted to quickly talk about posture to wrap things up. This is something we certainly see as chiropractors, and this is another thing that goes back to sitting quite a bit, where different postural abnormalities will present as we sit. You can get different sorts of curves in the back where you're tilted back, or you can get that kyphotic one in the middle there. I know when I go out in public, I'm really bad about looking at people and their posture and deciding what I think they need. So this is kind of feeding into that is these different sorts of cross syndromes. So I'll just quickly mention this. There's different cross patterns within the body that develop usually as a repetitive motion, like sitting. So we see this all the time. In the back, you'll have really tight erectors, which want to pull you back like this. And on the front side, tight hip flexors. So we see lots of people with this accentuated lumbar curve, which leads to different sorts of patterns that need corrected. And then likewise, there's a pattern of weakness versus tightness. So the glutes and the abdominals get weak. And so that needs addressed and corrected to ultimately fix the issue. And then vice versa in the upper extremity, talk to people every day that have really, really tight shoulders, say they hold all their stress through their shoulders, which I think there's maybe some truth to that, but I think it's more of a repetitive postural type thing. We see really tight chest region, and then vice versa, really weak front, the neck muscles, and back here in the shoulder region. So these types of patterns can develop from prolonged sitting. So that's just going back to that movement again, and standing can correct lots of these things. So I think I'm going to throw it back to Dr. Haluko. He's going to bring us home.
Bring us home. Thanks, Dr. Duress. We'll try to wrap up quickly. So the last piece would be hitting mental, emotional, and spiritual health. By no means am I trying to value this at all. You could spend far more time than I'm going to, but I just say that because we're not going to spend as much time, but extremely important to overall wellness and health. I go back to kind of where I draw all motivation from a health and wellness standpoint, that it's connected. That's what it means for us to be healthy, is all heart, soul, mind, strength, all of them working well and being as healthy as possible. Mental health is on the rise. It's being talked about much more, which is a very good thing. But I think there's a lot of factors why it's probably more present now. I think a lot of it has to do with foods we eat, to stress, to many situations that are increasing it. Regardless, it's very real. I want good mental health. So this is just saying it's everywhere in the world. It's the leading cause of disability. 1 in 5 Americans would fall into that category, and just a huge player from work to every area. And so I think there's ways to work preventatively in that from a mental health standpoint. By all means, I support very much mental health professionals, using them to our advantage, and there's plenty of things that need to be addressed from that standpoint. Stress, I always call the X factor. So it affects everything from a hurt little toe to digestive issues to headaches. Everything, it just makes worse. So I talk about that oftentimes, and if you've lived through 2020, I don't know many people that haven't had an increase in stress in their lives. And so that has effects. That most of those effects are not good. And so that needs to be addressed in many ways. As Dr. S talked a little bit about, that exercise is definitely a way from preventative. Don't have time to go in depth of how stress affects the body, but like I said, every issue, it's worse, and it manifests itself in people differently too. So it's kind of knowing ourselves. I did want to bring light to the immune system with it. When we get stress, our body secretes cortisol, as Dr. S talked about, and that then cascade of effects lowers our body's immune system. So it lowers our lymphocytes, our white blood cells, direct correlation to stress and to the amounts of stress that we have. So dealing with that appropriately makes us feel better, and oftentimes helps the present situation, but has huge, effects for the long-term situation. So, like I said, there's just every area that you can think of, it affects from a body standpoint. With that, we've talked about that. So some of my reminders, hopefully working proactively when it comes to mental and emotional health. We were made for relationships, so we need connection. It's so important. Doesn't matter age, doesn't matter where you are, and so especially during this time, trying to stress the importance of human connection. And so that may be phone calls and FaceTimes, whatever we can do, face-to-face, and in person is best. So much benefit from that. So that's huge. I believe very much in serving. So our times, our talents, our treasures, whatever we have to offer to help others, it's what we should be doing anyway, of using those abilities to help others, but that also helps us. It's amazing when we, go to do something good for someone that we end up getting benefit out of it. I think that's a great thing, how God made that. So certainly important for us during these times too. There's so much need out there. Look for a need and a way that you can you can meet that need. Hobbies, playtime, have fun. As Dr. S mentioned, get outside. We live in such a beautiful place that we can use to our advantage. It's so important just from a de-stressing standpoint. Recharge, everybody does that different. Hopefully you know how you can recharge your body, your battery, and that's something that we should be doing proactively, not once kind of the wheels fall off and you have to, but do it something proactively, that weekly you're looking at things that you can do to pour back into yourself, to get energy, to get strength back. And then hopefully we're honest with everything going on. You know, we certainly need people that we can talk to and have accountability from that standpoint. So key for us in all ways. Laughing is a wonderful thing. This is where my wife is the best. I'm so thankful for her because I have the tendency to probably be too serious and focused, and she is full of life and laughter, and is great in that way. But there's also certainly so many benefits to laughing and how it affects our immune system. Incredible. Couple stories with that. One of my favorite stories, there was a doctor that cured himself of cancer by laughing. True story. Because it took his mind off everything else. There's power in laughter. Also, laughing decreases pain. This hits home for me because 2 of our children, their birthing process was helped by a comedian. We love Tim Hawkins. I don't know if you've heard of him. Clean comedian. He's great. But literally the hours before we listened to him, would push pause, go into contractions, then play. That was for 2 of my 3 children. So I recommend that, but so much benefits to just laughing and how that helps. And there's obviously ways that we can do that and bring that in. Hopefully it's just part of who we are, that we see joy and laughter in so much around us. There's mental health benefits to it and social, but we're made in that way to experience those emotions and certainly experience laughter. Spiritual health. Train yourself in godliness, for while bodily training is of some value, godliness is of value in every way, and it holds the promise for the present life and also for the life to come. So that's why we're here. I don't want to, like I said, in any way underestimate the power of spiritual health and wellness. So thankful for what you do, Father, in teaching us how to do that better, in those that help us and guide us in that way. So important for us to be healthy. My reminders with that and the tendencies that I see is oftentimes we can worry about doing so much. And so the reminder is to be, as I talked about before, our identities in Christ, to enjoy that, to embrace that, to be in His presence, because life comes out of that. And so there's a time to be and there's a time to do. That's life. And so I want people to do both for sure, but my reminder is to enjoy being in God's presence daily. How that looks for you and works for you is different for all of us. Some people need music, some people just need times of prayer, some people need reading, some people need focused study. The point is we need to be, and we need to, that needs to be a part of our daily rhythms, as that helps us and encourages us and lifts us up. And that we're not focused on running all around and doing everything, because once we can can be, then we can serve others and do and the things that we need to in a much more effective way. I want to wrap up with a couple things. I often get asked, what's the one pill? What's the one thing? If I could do anything, what's the one thing that I need to do or should do in order for me to be healthy, to be protected? And so, as I mentioned early on, when we get into preventative wellness, there's no easy answer. There's no simple cure. It takes months and years of being focused on health and wellness. And so there's simple steps. I try to make it as easy as possible. I mean, oftentimes we know what we need to do to be healthy. It just takes intentionality. It takes time and energy. But there's no one thing that's going to, oftentimes flip the table when it comes to that. And so just things to keep in mind: clean water, hugely important to our immune systems, to our health. We have great clean water, but my reminder with anyone that has water that's cleaned municipally, oftentimes the chemicals are not good for us long term, so you can purify that. You can add minerals to that to make it far better if you have well water and have that tested. Oftentimes that's a great source of good, clean water, but make sure your water is clean because we should be putting lots of that in. Good, effective sleep, as that's restorative. Something I deal with every day is sleep disorders. That's everywhere because of stress, because of so many things. Eating real food, having great relationships that build us up. All of these make us healthy. Being close to God, knowing forgiveness, whether it's certainly with God or with others around us, and keeping a short account of wrongs when it comes to that. Want to do, I think I have time, a couple things that you probably have never thought of, but there's ways that we can even look at our body from a health standpoint and even get insights from our body. One thing is fingernails, that our fingernails are a way of showing if our bodies are healthy or not, our hair as well. But you've probably never looked at your fingernails and said, those look good, or those don't look good, and it must mean that I'm not healthy. But that is a way that our body shows us oftentimes if we're nutrient deficient. That's where many of these come up from certain minerals. Will show up in weak nails, or white spots is oftentimes with chronic diseases, and there's other things. So take a look at your nails. It might be able to show you something when it comes to that. Zinc is increasingly talked about more from a COVID standpoint, hugely important to our bodies from an immune system standpoint. And there's actually a really simple way to even get an idea of zinc levels. And so I brought in just a little test. It won't be bad if someone would volunteer, or I could do it if anyone would like to try. Sure. I'll have, if you want to come up. And so it's an easy way. It's not harmful. It's actually, this will have zinc, but this is a way that I can test your zinc levels. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to have you, don't swallow, just hold it in your mouth for 15 seconds and then swallow it.
Oh, but do swallow.
But do swallow it in the end. So as she does that, we'll let her do that, and I'll talk about zinc. So whoever's counting. If you don't have enough zinc, then we're in trouble. Okay. So if you could tell us what that tasted like.
I don't know if I can describe it. It's kind of salty.
Okay. Okay. If it tastes more like water and not too strong, then that usually means that your zinc levels are low. If it tastes pretty metallic from that standpoint, then it usually means your zinc levels are good. So the stronger the taste means the higher your zinc levels are.
It gets stronger after time.
Okay.
That's interesting as compared to initial.
Yeah.
Thank
So yours might be decent, which is great.
Debbie, do you take any supplements for zinc?
Not yet. Yeah, I've done this in the office extensively, and most people say it doesn't taste like anything. It tastes like water, because most people are zinc deficient. And that's also one of the major factors in any immune response. Zinc's so important in what it does to our immune system, in actually preventing an immune reaction. So it actually kind of taps the brakes, slows the immune process down from getting out of control. It also protects the cells from being kind of invaded. It's like shields around the cell. So super important, but something you're hearing talked about more. And so I want people taking zinc effectively to build their immune systems. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Yeah?
So that little test that you just did, is that something that's like an over-the-counter thing, or is it something you would never do to test yourself? Or?
No, you can test yourself, but you're not going to find it. I mean, that's like something that I guess we're exposed to, but you couldn't go to, Walmart and say, can I have a zinc test? Can you? I mean, you can, I wish they would, it'd be wonderful, but that's not the way that it works. I mean, typically in a blood test, you can get some of those and we'll look at that, but there's other ways to kind of get an insight into what the body is doing. Another way to see calcium levels is using a blood pressure cuff. Can I demonstrate this on someone? With someone, it won't hurt. At least it shouldn't hurt too bad. Kathy, you want to? So calcium, so important from an immune response. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put this on your, right on your calf, and I'm going to pump it up, and you're going to tell us when it starts to kind of grab and feel like a spasm. Yeah, but I'm not going to get, don't worry, I'm not going to get there. It's not going to be painful. You're fine?
Yeah. Nothing like a spasm.
Good, still good. Mm-hmm. Still good. Still good. Mm-hmm. Great. So you're over the levels. So if someone has, this is tissue calcium, if they have decreased tissue calcium levels, and I did this today, and it was very noticeable on someone. It's not gonna allow me to get up to 200 to 240 millimeters of mercury. You were at 260, so you're fine. I don't know if you take calcium, you get enough. Likely, this is tissue calcium. This is not bone calcium. So to make sure there's calcium so important in hundreds of body processes, lowers the fever effectively. It helps so much in our immune response, digestion, exercise so much. But oftentimes everybody's so focused on like bones. I need calcium for my bones, and they're taking a form of calcium that's not good. And so it's not doing much for their bones, and it's not doing much for their immune systems and their tissue calcium levels. So here's kind of the end. And so here's kind of general recommendations from an immune standpoint. So I make recommendations, but I quickly say everybody wants formulas. They want me to tell them exactly how much of vitamin A, vitamin B, vitamin C, D, all of them. Our bodies are amazing. They're wonderfully made, and we're different. And so how can I recommend, for someone that's 120 pounds and someone 300 pounds, that they're going to have the same levels? And if someone's activity level is all over the place, they shouldn't be recommended at the same level. And so there's so many factors in that way to consider. I do not believe if you look on the back of a supplement, the RDA, the recommended daily allowance, that's accurate in any way, shape, or form. So much of these figures are going to be much higher than that, which on most things that we're dealing with is totally safe and fine. And I always believe from a vitamin and mineral standpoint to get as clean as possible. So getting something that is whole food based, that's in its natural form makes a huge difference than taking something that is not. And then if you get high levels of something that is not well made, you can get into other issues with that. But that's getting recommendations, vitamin A, C, D, from an immune standpoint. Those are kind of the big three that you need, C and D, probably being the most effective. And so for most people, I recommend around 2,000 milligrams of vitamin C. Vitamin D, about 10,000 IUs a day is great and protective. Zinc, we've talked about 30 milligrams a day. Totally depends if someone's deficient, kind of what their needs are, but usually around 30 a day will help. Kind of a little side note with zinc is I've worked with numerous people that have had loss of taste from COVID. It's a zinc deficiency. Oftentimes with proper zinc, it corrects in days, in a day or two. And so having adequate nutrients allow the body to do what it needs to do. Calcium, around 800 milligrams a day is great, having good forms of it. And then there's lots of herbs that are helpful. So there is there's things that we can do, but I hope what you can take away is that it needs to be part of our daily life. It needs to be something that we're doing often to stay healthy mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, in all aspects. It just can't be something we're doing 10 minutes, that this is my health and wellness time. It's woven in our fiber and in decisions that we're making and everything. At the end of the day, the reason that I say that and do that is I want to honor the Lord. I want to treat my body in a way that is pleasing before Him and make sure that I'm able to be used in a way. And so that's why I'm just passionate about making sure that our bodies keep functioning and keep doing what He created them to do, because then we can serve others. Then we can live life and enjoy things to the fullest that we need to. I think that's the end of it. I think we were a little over, but I think we have plenty of time for questions, if that's good. Yeah? Kathy?
I was wondering about fasting for 48 to 72 hours. How do you recommend fasting? Are you, like when you do it, are you just doing water, bread and water? You know,
Mm-hmm.
what do you
Yeah.
have to do to get the most benefit from that? How much do you have to do?
I think that's knowing yourself. Some people need juice or some substance. Others can do just water. So I think that ideally, I think it's better to do less. The reason that you do just water is to give your digestive system a rest and to have it not process anything. So if you can do 24 hours or 48 hours or 72 hours of just water, that's great. Or tea, something that your stomach, your digestive system does not have to process is going to be more beneficial. But I know many people that can't do that because their blood sugar is so out of control that for them to not eat or not do anything for 24 hours would be really difficult. So they might need to do juice, like the Daniel fast, if you're familiar with that. There's different fasts. Daniel fast, I think, is a lot of fruits and vegetables or juicing. So there's ways that you can get into it and still get the benefits of fasting. Yeah.
That's once a month. You recommend that?
I think once a month makes sense. I know people that do it more frequently than that. I recommend detoxing with the seasons. So 4 times a year, doing like a 2-day, a week, some type of detox. That could be a fast. That could be, doing something from a week standpoint where there's a lot of ways to detox with different products, or saying, I'm just going to do vegetables this whole week as a detox. Or I'm just going to juice this week. But I think, part of consistently doing that is helpful. Yeah, do you have a question?
Yeah, you said something about bad calcium, or I missed that. There was something about some type of calcium.
Yeah.
Because I take calcium supplements.
Yep.
Like
So
magnesium and vitamin D.
So if you look at calcium supplements, the vast majority are calcium carbonate. And I joke and say you're better off licking the sidewalk than you are taking the supplements, because that's literally what it is. It's limestone. And so very difficult for the body to process it. It does get some, but you're not absorbing the calcium. So it matters. You can get very in-depth to it, but so many people think, well, I'm taking calcium, I'm taking magnesium. What's the difference? If it's vitamin C, it's vitamin C. It's not necessarily the case. And so we want good forms because the body can use it much better. So like calcium citrate, which you can find, is I think 5 times more absorbable. It's easier. We use calcium lactate, which just dissolves in water, and it's just instant in getting in, so it's better in those ways. Yeah. It depends on what form. I know there is some. I think there can be benefits to that. I'm not as familiar with the plant-based calciums. I know the carbonates and citrates and lactates and glutenates, and so you probably haven't looked to see the different types that it is. There's different forms of zinc. There's different forms of our minerals, and so my desire is always to get it in its most natural form, because vitamins and minerals are food. And so when we get them in the natural form, our body knows what to do with food. Oftentimes we have so processed those that it's not food anymore, it's chemical. And so our body treats it as a chemical and not as food. And so not saying that you can't get some benefit from it, but I don't think it's as beneficial as getting a clean form. So I hope that helps. Question?
So is there much difference between when we're talking vegetables using or buying organic versus the regular? I just want to know your opinion on that.
Yeah. I think there is. Once again, I try to be balanced. I think, organic for the most part is better for us in less, the pesticides, herbicides, and everything with that. But I'm very real in the fact that it's expensive. Most of us can't afford it. I can't afford it. And so there's certain ones that are probably a little bit more important. A lot of the root vegetables and leaf vegetables, to get those organic. Other ones, it's not as important. Oranges, apples, to have those, organic, not as important. Something I usually talk about, I did not have a chance, I think I mentioned it, was just with soil depletion, how fruits and vegetables now are nowhere near what they were 50 years ago, 20 years ago from a nutrient level. So when I try to talk to even with vitamins and minerals, it's not that I want everybody to have to take 20 supplements. That's not the goal. I want people to be healthy, and first and foremost to get nutrition out of food, because that's the best way. That's what our bodies do. Unfortunately, because of life and because an apple today is nowhere near what it was 50 years ago, 20 years ago, most people need to make that difference up. And so they're going to need to supplement in some way. And so that's unfortunately kind of how things work out. Yeah.
Would you talk for a minute about all the sanitizing that we are doing with hand sanitizers?
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of a problem. Using a lot of it.
Yeah. So I think I think I think washing our hands is helpful. So I'll kind of start out there. So I think we can do too much of something. And so I think even the sanitizers, they take the good with the bad. And I think there's the tendency to, I guess maybe, I don't know kind of what you're asking maybe.
It just seems like there's, you go into a store, you sanitize everyone in. I was under the impression that it's really not that good for you to be killing off all your good bacteria. So I've had a problem with it during all this COVID. I really got one to do it. And
Yeah.
those things up like
Yeah.
sanitize
Yeah.
a lot. We have our kids to sanitize a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. So I think once again, this can be a touchy subject. So I understand that, and so I think it's a personal preference. I would certainly say there's benefits to good bacteria and on interacting before, but I think we can overdo it. And I think that the tendency to be over sterilized is real. I think that was something that's been talked about for a while. Not that I want to be around germs. That's not the point. And I think washing hands is helpful. So there's the balance. But if we're sanitizing 10 times a day, it's not. I don't think that's as helpful to us. And so I think that's a decision that we all need to make. Because I know some people that need to do that, and that's okay. If that's where they're at, once again, that's fine. I just think that it kind of, I've seen people on both sides of it, if that makes sense. So I'm not against sanitizing. I just think that we probably do it a little too much, but there can be benefits to it, in this age. I hope I kind of address that. But I do think there's some sensitivity with that. And so I think it's kind of a personal thing where some people are like, nah, I'm not doing it. Other people are sanitizing very often, and if that's where they need to be, I kind of respect that. So I think that's an area of grace. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. Other questions? Yeah.
I have a 16-year-old daughter who's always been a great eater. Listened to me, ate what I made because she's homeschooled. She was last year has entered into high school at a private Catholic school, and of course the menu is not the best. She took the menu for a little while, even though she was taking a lunch, and kind of went, oh, this is making me sick. So she came out of it saying, I'm going to be a vegetarian. We only eat, grass-fed beef, red fish, fresh, very small amounts of, heavy protein like that. So I don't know how to help her get that balance of protein because the protein we're eating is very small amount, very high quality. So where do I go to help her have that balance? She's taking her own lunches now, and I find it very to do, very small amount. I don't want her to like bad eating habits.
Mm-hmm.
A 6-year-old girl.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, the meat makes her feel heavy, or she's tired, it takes more protein, it takes more energy to digest. So I get that, but I don't know what's creating that, health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would work with her and encourage. I think with a 16-year-old, it's important that she's eating, and it's important that she's eating enough. And the meat that's oftentimes a thing. To me, that's not as important as her getting, enough substance. Do you know what blood type she is?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So I mean, O's tend to do better with animal protein. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So I think that's you work with her and you say, okay, well, let's get things that you like, and let's make sure that you have enough, and that your energy is good, that you're feeling like you're able to sustain, you can think well, and there's a lot of ways of doing that. And if she doesn't want, animal right now, that could be something you can supplement through, different clean protein drinks or whatever. The reason that animal protein is B vitamins that we get in those, and so getting those other ways is totally fine. But I'd work with her, because that's a common thing that I see, and so I want to support eating and eating well, and not having to eat certain things.
Yeah, I find that if she's not eating, that she's craving something to get the blood sugar up, to get that energy from the B vitamins, and I don't know what kind of choices she makes, but usually
If she's, yeah. So, she's 16. And so, like, once again, I think you work with her, and you help her with that, but understand, I don't know any 16-year-old that makes perfect decisions, none. And so that is part of life, but our job is to train and teach and not force. And so, I want them to be able to see the consequences. I'm totally okay, at times with my kids not eating well, so that they can see the consequence of it. Yep. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a hard one. But once again, with everything going on, I care that she's eating, and she's eating enough, and then you work with those. And then see where you can kind of say, oh, well, let's just add this, drink or something to supplement from that to sustain more. You can jump in too.
and has severe bowel issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to give him ideas and support and help and things like that, and he's saying nothing's working, nothing's working. And his wife finally came to me just this last week, and they're very good close friends, and she said to me, he's been an only child, he's always been treated symptomatically. So he gets a headache, pill, he gets sick, let's take him to the doctor. So she said she just feels like that's all he knows.
Mm-hmm.
And what would be an encouragement I could make for him, of support, or who to go to, or what to do? Because I think he's just taking Western medicine as all he could do,
Mm-hmm.
and he's in the habit of quick fix. And I don't know how to suggest something. Long term, I told him, is this a lifetime change?
Mm-hmm.
You have to start improving, you can't think about it, and take control. Because he's starting to say, oh, I'm gonna be like this forever. I'm like, you're 31. This has got a long way to go.
Yeah, I think that's great to get them to make changes.
Healthy person too. Very exercise, activity, biking, all kinds
Mm-hmm.
of things. And he's had bad health, bad food choices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so men, just generally speaking, are not as health focused. Here's our sample set right here. So it's what I deal with and try to help to teach, and so I get that and that mentality, and so yes.
She came over, she saw me making all these snacks and food, and she went, I'm encouraged, okay. And so I think that's the route I'm gonna go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you wanna do this? Everyone should do it, not just him.
Yeah.
All the kids and everything should do all of their choices.
Yeah. I believe in situations like that, it's little steps that cause profound change. So it's the 1 degree of change idea that if you can drink better water, more water, if you can, start getting healthier snacks and start doing things, then that builds. But like I've talked about, digestive problems are everywhere. It's so common. I want, and I stress, the body doing what it was created to do, so good function. So we should not have those things. There's definitely ways to address those and look into those naturally, but it's not part of life to be full of aches and pains and to have digestive distress and to, have mental fog or whatever. Like, those are signs of the body not doing what it needs to do. So it's, I mean, we're always happy to do that, but you know, there's.
Chiropractic here is very different, so I don't know how to approach it to things like never gone to a chiropractor.
Yeah, I mean, that's where we can have conversations. Our approach is not like any other chiropractic facility because of being holistic in that way. So some people get it, and that's what they want. And so, I mean, that's a whole different thing. But the goal is to treat it, you know, naturally at its source. Other questions with that? Thank you. Thanks for coming. Thank you very much. If I can extend 3 official thank yous for Joni Sternhagen. If we can thank her for helping to arrange this. Kathy Swafford, if I'm saying that correctly, thank you so much for yours. And certainly Dr. Father Rex Road. Thank you so much for opening up your space and allowing us a chance to teach and be here. I think both of us will stay around for questions. If you have questions, you can email us if you have questions, whatever that we can be of assistance. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for your generosity.
Yeah.